Welcome to our Tuesday evening soiree on our Edgar Cayce series. This one is a very interesting one. This is Edgar Cayce on the Cross and the Crown. And with this one, for those of you who are not familiar with Edgar Cayce, he was in essence a clairvoyant who would put himself into a self-meditated sleep. And from there, he was able to transcend into other forms of consciousness and actually see and diagnose people's health, tap into the Akashic records to see how they've done things in the past, and provide a lot of help for people, and as well as a lot of guidance in a lot of ways. So he was very, very helpful to it. All told, he is the most documented psychic in the world. On record, there's been 14,000 plus recorded readings that he has done that are actually documented. And I have seen statements where people have gone to the courthouse and had certified, notarized copies of his abilities in healing other people's. The first one happened back in 1901, 1902 with a very little girl who he was able to diagnose and help. And the father was so joyful that he just went down to the courthouse and attested to that. And it's rather impressive to the things that he was able to do. He was, as a young man, he was always wanting to be of service and to help other people. And he went so far back into the 30s as to get a hospital going, starting in the late 30s. But guess what also happened in 1929? Yeah, the big depression started, right? Wall Street crashed, and he lost a lot of his funding. And there was a lot of other drama going on, which ended up him losing the hospital, which was, pretty much traumatic to him because that was his life's work, and he really wanted to do it. But it was along these times that one of the things that he found out was that while he was trying to help people and do well for them, his main purpose, according to his source, was to bring people back into connection with God. And they started a group in Norfolk in the early 30s. It was called Norfolk Study Group Number 1. And this was a group of people who would meet on a regular basis, and Cayce would provide dissertation from his psychic state, and they provided this entire book. It's a total of 25 chapters. There's book 1 has 12, book 2 has 12, and the chapter on meditation goes across both of them. So they're both there. All told, there was 25 different chapters. And this was one of them. This is we're going to start with this. It was introduced in the 262-34 reading. And you'll see some readings here, and I'll explain that at this time. But this one is a very, very interesting one because it's here where the source kind of draws the line and tells the study group, time to get with it. You guys got to decide. And interestingly, we see similar conversations in another 30 readings back when we get into the Destiny series, because that was another major turning point. Now, these readings are my interpretation thereof. Okay, I looked at the readings, and for this one in particular, it was just the reading that I used to formulate the presentation, simply because it's a very, very unique presentation in and of itself. And you are free to accept or reject anything that I may say. And I will tell you, before this presentation is done, I'm going to touch on some things that are going to perhaps be somewhat controversial, because it doesn't totally meld with mainstream Christian thought and what we have always been told. And if that isn't enough for you, wait till you see next week. All right, that's going to be a Lulu. All right. But anyhow, this is my story here on the cross and the crown. In the Bible, John 8:32, we read, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Very interesting opening line here, because this is going to force us, as it did Norfolk Study Group number 1, to make some serious decisions. We have to really, really think about this. I know that having been brought up in a Christian background, that it's quite easy to be a part-timer. You will go to church when it's convenient for you, namely Easter and Christmas. The rest of the time it's an option, let's just say, and we don't always necessarily do that. But understanding where we are now with respect to the cross and the crown, this is some time for some very, very serious discussions. Very serious discussions, inner meditation. Now, as a bit of a background, the way the group would operate, Cayce would introduce to them the topic, and the group as a whole and individually would meditate on that topic to take what their viewpoints are. And interestingly, the Cayce readings are very specific in that talks about you will take that which you know and apply. Because he's not saying that you got to do this, and this. He's going to say take it to your level of understanding and then apply it. Consequently, the readings could say one statement, but yet the end application could be 2 or 3 different ways based on who heard it and what their personal level of understanding is. And that it's pretty important to keep that in mind, because he's not telling us that we need to do this in order. It's not structured. We have free will to interpret. We have powers of reasoning that will enable us to take what we know based on our personal background information and then apply the new piece of information which we've just been introduced to and make an attempt to apply that in our lives. So it's pretty interesting, and you'll see how it came out here quite very shortly. I want to say this is like book 8, chapter 8. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it. It's either 7 or 8. I want to say it was 8. And the previous chapters of the Search for God material provided guidance. We had things such as cooperation, chapter 1. And we were schooled in how the cooperative forces should be. And then knowing ourselves. Because we need to know who we are, and we need to know who our relationships are with ourselves, with God, and with other people. And then we had to set the ideal. And the ideal is very, very important, because that is kind of your guidepost. That is what is going to act as, if you choose to use it, your pointer, to keep you on track, to go down and staying focused on God, on Christ, on the living ways and loving ways, to make sure you consistently apply them in your lives. And then we went on to faith and virtue and understanding, fellowship and patience. And now we are opening the door here and being in His presence. I think this might even be chapter 10. I don't know. Don't quote me on the chapter. I didn't research that. We have a choice. We must now decide. Are we going to make the choices in our lives that enable us to continue our earthly ways, the way we're doing things? And we need to think about how and what our earthly ways are. How do we interact with other people? What are our personal ideals? What's important to us? Are we going to continue down that path, or are we going to pick up our own crosses and go forward? Which means we're going to get on board with Christ being the way and the light. Now, the way this was put forth to Cayce was this lesson was very, very unique, especially when I read the readings for the first time, because what he came up with is that at the end of the previous chapter, his final paragraph was this right here. It says, as there has been presented in the lessons, that which may be applicable in the thought and study through any activity of an entity, so in the lesson, the cross, the crown, there is made the definite stand of the activities of an entity that must come to stand as that which is first and foremost in the minds mentally, the mind spiritually of each entity. And what he's stating right here at the end of this reading, or this actual, the introduction, is it's time to get with the program. You got to make a stand. Are you with me, or are you going to continue to do what you want to do? You have the free will to continue to do what you want to do. Certainly. And if that's your choice, then so be it. That's fine. However, now we need to start putting things up here mentally and making a concerted effort as individuals to put things forward like that. Okay? Yeah. Now, when we do this, the theme comes together. The theme starts to come together. The basis of each individual's approach must be not, what is my cross? No, that's not the question here. That's the usual question. Well, what do I have? What crosses do I have to bear? Well, I'm broke. My dog's sick. My grandparents are aging or something. That's what we often think. But Cayce's telling us that the first question needs to be, how may I, with his aid, best meet my cross in my approach to the crown of righteousness? Okay? That's the first key question. The key operative words here are with his aid. You see, as human beings, we tend to want to do things all of ourselves. But the key point that we're here for is to learn that we are to be companions and co-creators with God. And when we do that, then we are using his assistance, as opposed to be all about the I, me, my, me. What Cayce's saying is, okay, I have these challenges in life. How can I use God to help meet them? Doesn't mean we have to suffer. We have to certainly have some issues we're going to have to contend with, because we created these things ourselves. But can you meet them with the help of God with you? And the short answer is, yeah, you can. What he then went into at the very first beginning here on 262:35. Now 262 here is the reading category. That applies to the Search for God readings, is what 262 means. The 34 means that this is the 34th reading for the Search for God series, because Cayce was doing these periodically every couple of weeks, and in the interim he was doing readings for other people to heal them and find out other and answer other questions. So he was doing many of them, and Gladys Davis Turner categorized them as such in order to make them quite easier for us in this day and age to research them. Now, in 262:35, the very next one, very short, this is his opening dissertation straight out of the reading here. I'm going to read this verbatim. It says, as indicated by the outline or the basis of thought, as well as the meditation and the questions that each should ask themselves, the group, the individuals, have reached then that place in their study, their work, where, as it were, they are, as individuals, to apply that in their experience in giving out to others in the lessons that are being and are so to be prepared, that they have experienced in preparing themselves for the various channels of blessings each are to be in the service as of the furnishings, data, and lessons for others. Then he went on to list a series of questions. And that was it. What he's basically told him is said, okay, here's the questions. You go meditate on them. You come up with the answers. Meet me back here in 2 weeks and we're going to go with it. And of course, having the source here, when he was in his psychic state, he understood that what everybody's done. He already knew what they did. So that's what they're setting it up for. And it was very, very important because he's drawn the line here and said, okay, here are the questions that you need to deal with. You have to come up with these answers for yourself. Okay? The first one is this. Why was it necessary that he, the maker of heaven and earth, should bear a cross? Why should he have to bear a cross? That was the question. The group was supposed to think of that. 46, we learned, he, though he were the Son, learned obedience through the things which he suffered. Because back in the day, what happens, this goes all the way back to creation. Cayce tells us that the original sin was disobedience. Because as free will beings, we had a choice to make loving choices, or we could make selfish choices. And a high degree of people here today, not here, but down here on the third rock from the sun, probably made some poor choices previously. Consequently, we weren't the only one. He, the man who became Jesus, also understood that he too made some poor choices. Okay? He came in as Emilius, and Emilius was the soul. That's the original name. The first Adam is Emilius. Okay? Question number 2. Why did he come into the world as a man that he might bear a cross? Well, that's interesting. He didn't need to. You know, when you think about all the things that went on, and you think about the crucifixion, and in man's mind, could he, Jesus at that time, called upon the angels to undo this situation lickety-split? And the answer was, very simply, he could. But that would have defeated the entire purpose. Because what that would have done, and no pun intended, would have put the fear of God into people. Because this guy just flew off the cross. Holy cow. That would get their attention. And you see, that's not what God wants. He doesn't want people to be forced into making loving choices. He wants people to come to make loving choices on their own. We got to choose to do it. Not through coercion or fear. But we have to do it ourselves. We have to want to. And this is why we saw this. He didn't come off of it. Now, to give you a little bit of background, and this is Cayce's snippets on creation. That's a very, very deep subject. And if you've ever read the Cayce biography of There Is a River, right at the back is the philosophy chapter. That's some pretty deep thinking there. If you ever get a chance, read that puppy. And read it very slowly. Because it's going to give you his version. The original Adam, Emilius, became trapped in materiality and fell. When we were born as spiritual beings. And we were told that we weren't necessarily to be coming down here and hanging around. But we, with free will, chose to come down into this earth plane, and we saw what was here, and we wanted to experience that. Because we saw that the animals and the plants had different skills. They were able to see and hear and somewhat communicate and have sex and things like that. There were sensual attachments that we didn't want. And quite honestly, what happens is that we basically pushed ourselves, our soul, into materiality. And we took over those forms so that we could experience this. That was not what we were supposed to do. The problem is that it became habitual and addictive. And we continually to come back and do it again and again and again. And we came back to the point where suddenly, when we wanted to go back into the other regions of the universe that God created, we couldn't. We're stuck here in 3D world. Why? Because we made the choice that we wanted to be here. Remember, universal law, you shall reap what you sow. We made this choice. Now we're here. Now we've got to work our way out. And this is where, this is how Jesus came to be, through Emelius, the first Adam. He too came down, and he got trapped in materiality and fell. And if you remember in Genesis, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And what's going on? What's going on? Now we're seeing some self-gratification happening, right? This is what's going on. We're starting to come in here and people are becoming trapped because now, hey, this is cool. I want some more of this. Right? And that's what happened. And then he came to lead the sons of men back to the one God, which had been forgotten. Because as we were down in here doing all the self-gratification, it was all about the I, me, my, and not the bigger picture of God. Hence, we're stuck. Emelius came back, though he fell, he came back and said, okay, I want to lead you back to the right way. But in the interim, there has been some disobedience. And through a series of lifetimes, he overcame and set the example for us. And when we, personally, we can now ourselves overcome the world when we choose to live a life perfect and blameless as he did. Now, does that mean we can do it right now? Probably not. Probably not. But what we can do is in our everyday life, we can stop and think and ask, is there a better way for me to make a loving decision right now? And when we do that, we're making the attempt, and as Cayce told us, it's the try that matters. See? So we can start in our own way to make the effort, to try. And again, it's what happens afterwards is not necessarily up to us. This is out of the Atlantis readings. This is the report associated with it. And in this report, and this is kind of lengthy, but I'll read it slowly here for you. Emelius was endowed with a free will and the creative urge of the Father. He began to create companions, thought forms, patterned after the creatures given life by God. These thought forms were projections from the soul mind. See, we have the ability to co-create with God, and that's what Emelius was doing because he was relatively, free from the problems at that time. As they began to seek gratification of the senses, as did the physical creatures about them, they began to harden and to seek physical forms through which to become more conscious of the activity of the physical senses. And what happened now, look at these sexy things we're running around in. Hardened bodies, aren't they? Yeah. So this is what happened. We pushed ourselves in here and we got what we wanted. Now when we did that, we lost focus. Consequently, incomplete and unbalanced, these resulting creations and mixtures brought discord and inharmony. The magnification of any desire which seeks only selfish gratification must eventually bring upon its creator anguish and final destruction. Hence, as Cayce said, the only sin is selfishness. We're going to reap what we sow. You may get short-term jollies, but they're going to be long-time hell. I understand that because I made a lot of poor choices and my life went right down this line. Very true statement. Again from the 46th reading. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. He said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Like begets like. It is both cause and effect. And they that choose some other way become the children of darkness. And they are these: envying, strife, hate. And the children of these are sedition, rebellion, and the like. The children of light first love. There's your difference between the children of light and the children of darkness. We're all children, nonetheless. Emilius took responsibility, and he wanted man back with him. In order for that to happen, it required him to overcome the earth. And when you think about overcoming the earth, what that would initially mean is not fall suspect to all of the things about us in the material world where we are getting caught up in PMS, so to speak. PMS being power, money, and sex. Every TV show, every movie, there it is. That's the theme, isn't it? Somehow, some way. Wouldn't be a good story without PMS. Got to have some of that in there. And you see, when we see all these things in here, what's it encouraging? What's it encouraging younger people to do? Hey, this is full. Let's go down this path. You see? And what it comes to us, for us to overcome, we have got to meet these urges to do such things and then choose not to. Because we don't have to choose it. We have a choice. We have a choice. And when you think about how everything came, it was like a big move to the downside, because from the fall, things eventually snowballed down and down, down, deeper, deeper, deeper. We got ourselves into some really deep trouble along the ways. Mankind needed a Savior. Okay? It was then when Emilius, who came in as very life forms, came down, and now we have turned a corner. Because we understand that we do in fact have a choice. We have to be in this world, but we do not have to be of the world. And when Jesus started to come, now we're starting to see the way. We're starting to go to the upside. So maybe we've put in the bottom, and now we're starting to rally back to the upside. Because now we have a guidance. We have an example. Thus, Emilius, Adam, and Jesus, there you go, the first and last Adam. The first and last Adam. In the Search for God readings, it tells us, hence, the first Adam, the last Adam, was given power over the earth, and, as in each soul, the first to be conquered was self. And you see, when it comes down to knowing ourselves, chapter 2 of the Search for God book, we have to learn to conquer ourselves. We have to know our relationships to everybody. You know, free will is the most powerful force in the universe. And a lot of things that we can do, certainly because we want to. But just because we can, does that mean we should? I can run down to the gallery with my credit card and max that puppy out. I can do that. But should I? Probably not. End of the month, the mailman comes. That isn't going to be a good thing. And so consequently, we have got to understand that we are being bombarded with outside urges to do things which are going to be driving us towards a self-centralized course of action that may not necessarily be the best course of action for us. Consequently, we need to choose and have right up here at the forethought of our minds the ability to make loving choices. Why is it necessary to bear a cross? Why must we carry a cross? Why me? Well, you're going to reap what you sow. Our crosses are of our own making. We do this to ourselves. Disobedience and repeated pursuit of lower vibratory sensual feedback led to our demise. When we succumbed to these urges, selfishness and carnal gratification prevailed. Consequently, we got to meet this now. We got to come back in and overcome. Perhaps once upon a time we didn't do so good, but now we can do better. And we're being given other chances to do that. Every day is chock full of opportunities for us to overcome ourselves and to meet ourselves and to meet our problems. And it's all about how we choose to think about this. And because, and Cayce readings tell us that whatever plane of consciousness deeds happen on, they must be met there. Because you can't progress it until you got a clean slate, then you're able to motor on a little bit. Because it is through our earthly experiences that we are able to overcome the seeds that we have sown in the past. Each lifetime, we decided upon things that we needed to mend. We had a list of fences that we needed to go mend and fix. And we come down here into our lifetime with the intent of meeting these challenges and overcoming them. Certainly not easy. But we must want, desire to move forward bearing our crosses. And when you think about how things happen and how we create our own heaven and our own hell upstairs, which is what we in fact do, think about your actions or your inactions. There's times where I use this example in the opportunity presentation. Let's say for many, many years you had the ability to, but chose not to, stop and help somebody on the side of the road. Or at least, be there with them so that they maybe perhaps felt safe. You show them what? Now, somebody else will come. It's somebody else's job, right? Well, invariably, what's going to happen, someday, some way, you're going to find yourself out in the toolies, broke down, no cell phone service. It's just you and Bigfoot. And now the mind starts running. So now all these times that you've passed somebody up that where you could have in fact helped someone and chose willfully not to, well, guess what? You may have to meet that. You may have to meet that. We all know that a lot of bad things happen to people who break down out in isolated areas, don't they? Just happen to be right there where the boogeyman is. And I guarantee you, having watched a lot of these movies, Friday the 13th, 1 through 27, whatever version we're on now, invariably we have these thoughts in our mind, and it kind of scares us in a lot of ways. Well, you're hoping that somebody's going to come by to help you and not kill you. But by the same token, what have you done in the past? Have you been able to stop and choose to provide aid to somebody or at least comfort someone? Or did you willfully say, it's somebody else's job? This is how we have to meet these things. And we may not think about these things. We don't really think about this because we've never been trained to think about these things. But we've got to. We've got to really think about this because the greatest leader, the greatest master, will be the servant to all. And it's our job to help other people. And it ain't all about us, though we may disagree with that. It's not all about us. Out of the 36 it says, so each in their respective lives, their own experiences, find their cross overcoming the world. Overcoming those things, those conditions, those experiences that would not only enable them to meet the issues of life, but to become heirs with him of the crown of glory. So quite honestly, the challenges that we face in our personal life, whether it be physical, financial, personal, or whatever, are quite honestly blessings in disguise. If we choose to have some help meeting it, and we meet it in the right light, in companionship with him who is here to help us, as opposed to trying to do it all ourselves. Because we've already known. We all got snow on the roof around here. Sort of. And we have a tendency of screwing things up when we try to do it all ourselves, don't we? Things go a lot easier when God's involved. It really, really does. And a lot of reasons you're going to see here why we don't do this. We don't do this a lot because, believe it or not, we are ashamed to in our own ways. Next question posed to the group. Why do we necessarily bear much that he bore, and yet say that when taking his yoke upon us, the cross becomes easy? We had to go through the same thing he does. How does heaven's name that make it easier for us? Well, when you step back and think about it, what was Jesus' purpose? His purpose was to save mankind, to become an example, to become the pattern for us to go, to follow. Our purpose, not to save mankind. Our purpose, save our own bacon. We're here to save ourselves. We must travel the same paths. We must face the same temptations. And it's these experiences that we encompass, that we actually glean power and knowledge from in order to help overcome these things. And what has to happen in order to meet these challenges, whatever they may be, is we have to have an ideal. Chapter 3, Book 1, Search for God. What is the ideal? What is your mental, physical, and spiritual blueprint that you're going to follow day by day in order to meet whatever's thrown at you? You know, waking up is good, but it goes downhill from there sometimes because now the challenges begin, right? Might get up, coffee pot not work. Now what do you got to do? Heavens. Go out there, open up the garage door, blow a fuse. So anyhow, we've got to have a guidepost, right? Life gets up there, we get in and we open the garage door, car won't start. Oh, it's going to be a good day, right? Now what does that mean? That means I'm going to be late, that means I'm going to have to get somebody to help me, and that means I'm going to have to spend some money. Negative things, we have challenges to meet. How are you going to choose to meet those? With a smile on your face, or are you going to talk to God and give Jesus a new middle name? You got to have the right attitude. You got to have the right attitude. These are happening for a reason. And you have to ask yourself, what is that reason? And you don't necessarily need to rectify it in your mind immediately. But you understand, if you understand and accept that it's happening for a reason and that reason is for my benefit, then maybe we put a positive spin on and deal with it. Very, very high degree of possibility that it has to do with learning to practice patience. We're all patient beings, aren't we? Yeah. And think about that. This is the things that we have got to deal with. And having an ideal will help you go through life day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour with the right attitude. And this is what we're seeing. And we must face the same path. Is there anything new in this world right now that hasn't been there before? Do you think that the people in the 1600s, 1500s, 1200s, 1100s, 500s, 400s didn't have PMS issues going? Wasn't there power struggles? Wasn't there, materialism going on? Wasn't sex always right there going on, right? Money, got to have that money, right? That's nothing new. Nothing new. Same song, second verse, right? Cayce even tells us that. He goes, oh, ye say, this is not new. Neither is thy present disturbance, nor thy present hope, nor anything. For even as he said, there is nothing new under the sun. What is, has been, and will be again. It might be new to you, but in the big picture, in the big scheme of things, there ain't nothing new. And if we look at and read the Old Testament of the Bible, we see how things tend to repeat over and over and over again. We see the repeating themes. We see again the power struggles. The power struggles carried over all the way into the New Testament. It was the power struggles that actually ended up getting Jesus crucified. Because he was an irritant to those in power. And get rid of him. I don't care how. Kind of sounds like a lot what I hear in the news these days too. So again, nothing new. Nothing new. Nothing has changed. Same song, second verse. When we invite his presence to abide with us, our burdens will ease. We cannot do it alone. We may think we can, and we think that we're going to make the best choices, but then again, are we truly making the best choices? Because do we have the bigger picture, or are we just focused in on just a little bit of the situation? We very, very, very rarely know the full realm of facts surrounding any situation that we hear about. Very rarely do we know it. And it's important that we share these things with us. Let Jesus be with us. Let him walk with us. Let him channel to us his love, his thoughts, his words, his ideas. We can always communicate. Let him work through you. When we do that, then we are abiding with him and he with us. And I can guarantee you, life is a lot easier. Life gets a lot easier when you do that, when you take on that mindset. It is a lot easier. Because when you are working and walking with him, the turmoils of life become much, much more easy to bear, much peaceful. And the things that we perceive ourselves to be suffering from are actually bits of wisdom that we can take and build on going forward. We can really learn from all of our things. And when you come down to it, the bottom line is right here. Our crosses are our misunderstandings and misapplications of his laws. God's got his laws. They hadn't changed since day one, wherever day one was. However, it's our interpretation, our application thereof. Hey, let's do this. We're going to circumvent that which we choose to do for our own benefit. Right? I can do this. I have free will, so I'm going to do it. All right? I don't need to necessarily do that. Now, in the 36th room, as he is given and has been presented again and again, not in times nor seasons, not in new moons nor any place, but every day, every hour, we show forth his love in a manner that makes for the knowledge of all contacting us that he walks with us, that he is our friend. You see, a lot of people think that they're getting their material lives are going to get convoluted one way, shape, or form, and invariably we go down the pity party and say, well, God doesn't love me. God doesn't want me to do this. God doesn't want me to do that. When in fact, it is not that the case. The case is rather, we have turned our back on God. He's still there. All we got to do, put our big boy pants on, turn around, and say, hey, buddy, let's go. Because why wouldn't he? You see, we tend to put human emotions and we attach human emotions and behaviors towards God. And consequently, we are doing ourselves a disservice when we do that. Because why would he do that? He is not like us. He's going to make loving decisions and loving choices. He's not going to play this little tit-for-tat petty games. He doesn't have to. Universal law states that we're going to reap what we sow. We are ourselves our own worst enemies. Sooner we get that, then we start walking with him and letting him guide us day by day, hour by hour. I can guarantee you, things get a lot easier. Things get so much easier. Okay? In the way of the cross is light. Though it may have its crown of thorns, it has also its glory that passeth understanding in the finite mind, that be us. Yet, as the infinite opens the way, the thorns become less and the way brighter. We will try to get through the thorns the hard way. And we'll cut ourselves up doing it. Again, we're trying to put everything on us, ourselves, being the hero. We have finite understanding. We do not know the full picture of everything. It's when we start to open ourselves and be receptive to a personal relationship with God on a daily basis that we may still get stuck a time or two, but the way is getting brighter and it's not going to hurt as much. And the only way to truly describe that is to go out and try to live it and believe it and trust it. And ask yourself, what is the best way for me to do what you would have me do at this time? Ask. Say, hey, show me what's the best thing for me right now that you would have me do. Don't make your own decision, because you're going to go out there and play in the yard. There's other things that you can do. You might find an impulse, an urge suddenly to go over here. Maybe you're going to come over here and turn the corner at the shopping in the grocery store, and you see a bunch of boxes falling on the ground. Opportunity. Are you just going to leave them there? Or are you going to kind of pick up because you can and put them back up? Well, it's not my job. Well, and the person who knocked them down ain't going to put them up either. If the person who has to put them up didn't knock them down. So now you're helping somebody out, aren't you? You're not looking for big bonus points. You just do it out of love. You do little things out of love because it helps somebody else. And you're not looking for bonus points. If you start looking for rewards for doing good things, you're going to get your reward right there. Cha-ching. That ain't going to do you a bit of good when you quit breathing. Because it goes right back to the Bible. Right back to the Bible. Remember the story of the Pharisee who went into the church, and I'm glad I'm not like other men, a sinner and this and that and the other. And then the other guy came in, just a regular layman, and he goes, bless me, Lord, a sinner. And Cayce addressed that in his readings. And he actually said that Pharisee, because people were in awe of how awesome he was, that was his reward right then and there. Didn't do him a bit of good later on in life. But he got what he wanted right then and there. We don't always think about these things. So when it comes down to trying to find out Who will aid us in any given day the most? Cayce was asked that question specifically. He said, God. Who will aid me the most? And you thought it might have been the boyfriend or the banker. God. We're here to reestablish our personal relationship with God so that we can indeed become companions and co-creators. It's a choice. If you ask Him to join you in life, life's going to get a lot easier. Does the life lived according to our own faith explain why each soul must bear a cross? This is interesting. This is interesting. We have faith. We're all good, upstanding Christian people. Or whatever religion we are. But we're all good, awesome peeps, right? Well, quite honestly, knowing what to do and doing them are two entirely different things. Knowing what to do and doing them, two different things. We know we should cooperate with others, but do we? Or are we a part-timer when it's convenient for us? We know we have to have an ideal based on the Lord, but do we? Maybe. We know to have faith and to be faithful, but do we? Are we faithful? Or we just have faith, or we just pay lip service to it? We know to seek fellowship with the Lord and brotherhood with our fellow man, but do we? We know to be patient, but are we? Patience is very interesting because Cayce was asked specifically, when I lose patience, what has happened? He goes, when you lose patience, you've lost patience with yourself. You've lost patience with yourself. Situation, you're going to blame somebody else for aggravating you to no end. But at the end of the day, it's you who has lost patience with the situation because you choose to probably try to deal with it yourself as opposed to inviting somebody who might be able to help you out a little bit. By knowing and not doing, the ego takes over. Ego, edging God out. Ego, edging God out. We're pushing Him aside, so why? So we can pursue our material desires. I want to do this. I want to do that. By knowing and not doing, we create our own personal crosses that we must bear. We got to deal with it now. But by meeting our crosses, we slowly begin to gain understanding. You know, so much what I know right now, I wish the hell I knew 40 years ago. I do. I tell people when I teach in the classroom, I said, well, you know, I got this degree and that degree, but I also got a doctorate. My doctorate's from the School of Hard Knocks. Self-imposed, I may add. Do you remember universal law? I like to call it universal law number 1. God shall not be mocked. We shall reap that which we sow. As the reasoning of self leads the way in the experiences of the awakening, in self with those activities from day to day, so keep self in the way of following in His guiding ways. Every day it's a choice. We're constantly bombarded with influences that we cannot see. Outside influences. Cayce tells us that very rarely are you ever alone. There are numerous souls in this room other than those whom we can see. And it was very interesting because I was doing one of these at Unity of Phoenix, and one of the gals in the audience was a medium or a psychic or something. She goes, "This room full? I see a lot of people in here." Okay, that's good. But see, here's the thing right there. Keep self in following his ways. We know what to do. We know what to do. We have got to want to. That's the whole key. We have got to want to. Why has the cross been chosen rather than some other philosophy that might correlate the material and the spiritual life? Why the cross? The cross is symbolic of the life and teachings of Jesus, who became the pattern, who overcame the earth. And that's how it ended, basically. It answers the soul's pursuit of truth. If you remember at the beginning, John 8:32, right? This truth shall set you free. The soul knows. Our mental minds may be in denial of a lot of things, but our souls and our subconscious minds know this. The cross is universal in its appeal, yet personal in its application. How are you going to do that? How are you going to do and live the way Jesus did? It's your choice. Think about what Jesus told you. Remember that gal in the Bible? The boy stuck her in a hole and was fixing to stone her. I think she was a prostitute or something. And he addressed them and said, let the first one who has no sin throw the first stone. I'll turn around and beat feet. He got her out. You remember what he told her? Go and sin no more. That was it. Go and sin no more. That was it. Not judgmental. Sin, being selfish. Don't be selfish. Go out and do for others. The other spiritual leaders that are prominent across major religions, the Buddhas, the Mohammeds, etc., those folks, they may point the way. I can tell you what they want you to do. Jesus is the way. He is the way. He was the servant of all. For he, indeed in suffering, the death on the cross, became the whole, the entire way, the life, the understanding that we who believe in him may too have everlasting life. Think about what happens here. When we think of everlasting life, are we thinking in material human forms that we're going to keep having human lives? Or do we reckon back to when we were spiritual beings? Now, do you remember? We chose to come into this third 3D plane here. In this material, we have to get our way out. What happens when we get our way out? Isn't the whole doors just open? The entire universe out there? Think about the possibilities. And it's very, very hard for us to think of the possibilities because we can't fathom them. All right? We just can't fathom the possibilities of this. But it starts with us right now, in the here and now, going out and trying to emulate the way of Christ. Little things, step by step, precept by precept. Not going out and jump on a cross yourself. Just go out and try to be kind to your neighbor. Smile. All right? Be very slow in the approach. The soul is eternity. Its soul is for eternity. What else you got to do? All right? Cayce also said in the Atlantis readings, he was asked, what part did Jesus play in any of his reincarnations in the development of the basic teachings of the following religions and philosophies? First, Buddhism. Answer, this is just one. Mohammedanism, Confucianism, Shintoism, Brahmanism, Platoism, Judaism. As has been indicated, the entity, as an entity, influenced either directly or indirectly all those forms of philosophy or religious thought that taught God was one. that taught God was one. Now, entity. Cayce used that term a lot. And what entity meant was basically the soul across all lifetimes, irrespective of what physical body that person, that soul reincarnated in. He was talking about these things. And Jesus, the soul who is Jesus, influenced in some way, shape, or form all of these things. I have a very, very dear friend of mine who is a Chinese lady in Austin, and she is a Buddhist. And we were at dinner one night, and we were just talking about stuff, and I was giving her out some Cayce, precepts that Cayce taught. And she sat right across from me, and the only things that she kept saying, well, that is Buddhism, that is Buddhism, that is Buddhism, that is Buddhism. So there's a lot of things together. And understand that religion is man's design, man's interpretation of God's laws. Man's going to form their personal interpretation for whatever reason. But if you focus on the things that are consistent, the things that are compatible one another, you're going to find that a lot of the things are pretty much across the same way. Because there is no one religion that corners the market. And my personal belief is that you're going to reincarnate into a thought here that best suits your soulful development. Maybe there's certain things in Mohammedanism that you need to learn, or Confucianism, or Christianity. You're going to be put into that circumstance. You're going to choose to enter into that realm so that you give yourself the opportunity to learn if you so choose to do so. Why is the cross, the emblem of shame, necessary for those who seek the crown? This is interesting. We innately know, whether we choose to consciously admit it or not, that we are guilty of being disobedient to God. We know that. We know that our actions caused Jesus, a human being who was a human being just like us, to die a very horrible and terrible death. It is through our guilt, our own personal guilt, built in over the years, deep, deep, deep down within us, is our guilt that we deem the cross to be shameful because we know what happened because of us. We know that. The cross, in essence, mirrors the shame that each of us bear within. We know this. It doesn't always come back to the conscious mind, but in the subconscious mind, you know it's there. We know it. We just got to learn to deal with it. The good news, though, the shame is not permanent. Through humility, suffering, patience, love, and forgiveness, we grow. The fruits of the Spirit towards one another. We can overcome this. And do remember, it is always the darkest before the dawn. It's always the darkest before the dawn. And we may think that what we're doing is just, oh my God, I can't take this anymore. But it's going to get better. It was very, very dark the day that Jesus died. But what happened? 3 days later, an abundance of light. And that light's been propelling ever since for our benefit. Bless you. As we grow through the bearing of our crosses, the shame transitions into joy. Because quite honestly, there is a lot to be said for being able to unashamedly help somebody else. To go out and just help them. There's a lot of people out there who are not as fortunate as we. A lot of people are down on their luck in one way, shape, or form. How can we help them? Is there any way that we can help them? That doesn't mean build them a house. Maybe something as simple as a smile. Maybe a glass of water or something. Something simple. Doesn't have to be major. Doesn't have to be major. But when you see that, it's opportunities. And by helping others, we grow and we truly find the joy. The joy will come. The joy will come. I found out at St. Vincent. Really cool place. Go down there and help. You know, people say, oh, I'm going to go feed the homeless. Especially on Thanksgiving and Christmas when the cameras and celebrities are there. But quite honestly, if you go down there on a regular basis, believe it or not, you may say that I'm going to go help feed the homeless, and up to a certain degree you are. But do you know who you're truly helping? You're helping those who are also helping them. Because folks, when you have 500 people coming through in an hour, trash needs to be taken out, tables need to be bussed, floors need to be mopped and wiped and down, tables need to be cleaned. Friend, if you need some work, go down there. In the study, in the thought, this is found to be experienced by all. That there was the necessity for man's understanding for the entering of the Son of Man. And that the cross becomes the emblem of him who offered himself of himself. We were totally engulfed in darkness before Jesus came. And we needed a little help. We needed a little bit of help. And that's why I say it was just all downhill until he came, and then now we're turned the corner. Now we're starting to make progress. Because now we're coming into a deeper understanding of how we can better deal with the situations that we have. And then, once we get there, we finally get to crown ourselves. It's a process. It's a long, arduous road. It's not easy, but we built it ourselves. We're doing this of our own dealings. Okay? By bearing our own crosses, we complete the work and finish the race. With him, we have participated in the redemption of mankind. We helped. Of the world and of ourselves, we can say that we came, we saw, and we conquered. And like Jesus, at the very end, we too can say it is done. And it is done.